Dear students, this class we are going to discuss about the different modes of supply and different categories of services. Last class we were talking about the entire service sector and the bifurcation and contribution to the economy and also the basic commitments. And the services are delivered under different modes under the WTO. And also we can see that the WTO the GATS coverage as well and also the core service areas in this particular class. So, we already said that the GATS agreement has concluded as a new addition to the Uruguay round of negotiations, and even much before that you can see that some of the services were rapidly growing in certain countries and in a faster pace, and this which leads to some of the countries to include the service sector and the service sector and the service suppliers as well. But most of the countries, especially the developing countries, and they are opposed to the complete inclusion of the services agreement, and then finally trade related service sector. That is why you can see the name of the agreement itself is General Agreement on Trade in Services. So, the members agree to include trade in services, and also even some of the areas of services has got a kick, or you can say that an advantage, and some of these areas got advantages where the tourism sectors, travel services, financial sectors, etc., etc. So, the quick advantages, and then you can see the service sector which is when compared to the GATT provisions or GATT service sector. Here we can see that the market access has been is given to the individual member countries to decide which sector to be opened up. So, unlike the GATS covers measures affecting both the product service and the supplier services. So, and also last class itself we explained it, the product. So, that means the service sector as well as the limitations on suppliers are also included in the service sector GATS agreement. And also the supply, the modes of supply has been explained under 4 heads in the GATS agreement. And as I told you that the market access is subject to national treatment principle, but it is to be decided by the individual countries subject to limitations, and these limitations are included in the schedules, individual country schedules. So, here you can see that the obligations under the 2 heads, that is the general obligations and directly or applicable to all member countries, those who have signed the WTO agreement, and then special commitments with regard to market access and national treatment principles, and also the sectors which is given to the individual member countries to decide which open. For example, whether you want to open the tourism sector, financial sector or higher education sector or other around 161 member countries. So, the sector is given to the individual countries to decide and to be included in the schedules, in the country schedules. So, the general commitments, the two principles are applicable to the GATS agreement as well, that is, one is the MFN treatment, and also definitely the treatment given to all the member countries should be subject to the MFN principle, and then talk about the transparency. National inquiry points are mandated under this particular agreement as well as a part of the larger regime of the WTO agreements. Then special commitments which you can see that on market access. So, the GATS agreement gives, unlike the goods agreement, the GATS agreement gives the leeway for the member countries to decide the market access, which area to be given market access. So, it is the negotiation between the countries and specific sectors, and also various limitations which you can find under article 16(2). So, these limitations to be put in the schedule. So, and whether it is the limitation with regard to the service sector or with regard to the service provider. So, you can in your commitments you can put it subject to that particular conditions and you accept the schedule and which is applicable to your country, and it may these limitations may include service suppliers, service operators or the employees including the foreign employees, value of transactions, legal form of service or supplier which includes collaborations and also the capital cap also is to be determined. Then especially the participation of foreign capital. So, whether it is 51% or 49% also you can put the limitations. Under the national treatment principle which is applicable same as that of any other WTO agreement, this is applicable to the service agreement as well. So, if you look into the GATS, you can see that the general obligations which is applicable to all members and the schedule of specific commitments which is applicable to every country which is annexed as country annexes. All these are annexures or schedules, country specific schedules are attached with every country commitments, and also commitments are under service sector as well as the mode of supply. So, we can see that the mode of supply simply there are 4 modes of supply. What are these 4 modes of supply? So, here you can see the cross border trade. Cross border trade is very simple. So, the service is crossing the borders and people are not crossing the borders. The service is provided from one country to the other country. So, for example, all that are happening online, BPOs, business process outsourcing, legal process outsourcing, and most of the outsourcing companies in India they use this method of cross border trade. There is no much controversy in the cross border trade. Out of these 4 trades, cross border trade is most popular because there is no question of transfer of natural persons, only here the transfer of trade. Then the second is the consumption abroad. The consumption abroad, that residents goes abroad for availing the services. For example, people those who are coming to India for treatment, the students those who go abroad for taking various courses. Then comes the third, the mode of supply, that is the commercial presence. For example, all financial institutions, foreign institutions or foreign banks working in India. So, this is commercial presence. Actual your business or shop is present in the country. Then the fourth mode is the most controversial, that is the presence of natural persons. So, the again here also or presence of natural persons or movement of natural persons is required here. So, that means one person from country A going to country B and providing services. So, movement of people are required for the fourth mode. So, the first mode is very clear, service is crossing the borders and service, the consumer is in one country and the service supplier is in another country, and consumption abroad, the consumer from country A and goes abroad and the supplier, the service supplier is in the country B and he service supplies to the consumer A from another country. So, we said examples almost all the students. Commercial presence, and commercial presence we said the consumer from country A gets service at his own country from a third member country. So, from another country. So, a service provider from another country comes to your country for providing services to the consumers in country A. So, this is the commercial presence, and so we already discussed about. So, cross border supply is very famous. So, you do not have to, there is no movement of natural persons. So, you can see that whatever is happening through the internet and even telemedicines, distance learning trainings, online programs, online courses, everything will come under the cross border supply. And in the consumption abroad, basically which includes tourists, patients, students, these are the three main categories where the people go abroad. And so, for taking services, so it is consumption abroad, and you can see that the commercial presence and the another mode, most popular mode of services are commercial presence. So, it means the supplier comes to your territory to provide services. So, I already said that all subsidiaries of foreign banks, insurance companies or construction company or any other company comes to your country and providing services to your people. The last category of people or category mode of supply is the most controversial. Why it is controversial? Because there are movement of people. Movement of people are involved, whether it is doctors or professionals or lawyers or teachers or IT personnel or natural persons. So, most of the countries put lot of restrictions on the movement of natural persons, because it depends upon the migration, it depends upon visa requirements, it depends upon professional qualifications. There are a lot of issues which is involved with the movement of natural persons. So, this is mostly restricted by the companies. So, I was talking about the core supply areas. So, this core area of supply is considered to be 161 in 161 services. This 161 services is identified by the United Nations product classification system. So, the important 12 divisions are business services, communication services, construction related engineering services, distribution services, education services, environmental services, financial services, health related social services, tourism and travel related services, recreational, cultural and sports services, transport services, other services not include elsewhere. These 12 areas which you can find it into subdivided into various other areas, and total of 161 areas. So, you can see here business services includes what? It includes the professional services, research and development service, and real estate services. All these will come under the first the business sector, or you can say that broad sectors, business services, and construction and engineering services, which is already we opened up India, and distribution services. So, you can find n number of distribution services and franchising. Education services divided into primary, secondary, higher education, adult education and other education services. So, education services is also one of the categories, and then environmental services, for example, sewage service. So, and also the refuse disposal services and sanitation and similar services, all these are come under environmental service. Then comes the financial services, banks, so insurance companies, all these will come under the business or financial services, financial institutions. So, then comes the health related social service and other than those who are listed under other areas. So, hospital services, and also you can see social service. Then comes tourism, and one of the most popular method which is mentioned is the tourism and travel services, and most of the countries get their income from the hotel and tourism services. Then comes the recreational, cultural and sporting services. So, entertainment service, so news agency service, libraries, sporting, this is another category. Then comes the transport services. Transport services includes all, that is maritime services, internal waterways and air transport service and space transport, and then other rail transport, road transport, pipeline transports, and then services auxiliary to made all of the above. So, it means that transport services are also opened up, but we can see here the air transport is absolutely controlled by individual countries through bilateral negotiations. So, we already talked about these UN product classification system, and which is already has accepted by all the WTO members as a part of market access commitments, especially these services as are for the specific purpose of market access commitments. So, this is a little bit of old data, but what it says. So, commitments and largest commitments are made by the year 2000 1999 within a period of 1995 to 1999, which shows that the largest commitments are made by members in the tourism sector, and second only business, and third is financial, and fourth is communication services. So, if you take the first 5 services, it is basically 1 tourism, movement of people are involved, business may or may not, financial services, that is included in mod 3, that is a commercial presence, and communication services. Again you can see that communication services which completely change the Indian scenario, then construction, recreation, and it is going so and so forth, all the 12 services. So, tourism sector is one of the preferred service sector of all the member countries. And how we are looking into, so these are the 4 modes of supply under the GATS agreement. So, if you look into the governance and transparency, which you can see that it prescribes that every member country should publish all laws relating to the service sector, or any change in guidelines from time to time. For example, if a particular country is increasing visa fees, entry fees, etc., all this will come under to be is to be published, is to be reported to the WTO, so that every country knows about it, and also the regulatory changes to be published in advance, so that every person knows about the entry requirements to that particular country. And then rules and regulations with regard to service suppliers, formation of national tribunals and other procedural aspects, administrative decisions, and administrative appeal will go to the tribunals from administrative decisions. So, all these facilities to be made along with this particular adoption of specific schedules, and MFN principle which we talked about in the market access commitments. And here in the service sector, in the goods sector, you cannot make any exceptions, but certain exceptions can be made. Certain exceptions can be made in the MFN principle. So, all these commitments are made, or the specific reservations are made in the country specific list or schedules. So, any country can put certain restrictions, for example, conditional market access principles, exception to national treatment, which can be made, and you can put limitations on the number of service suppliers and value of total transactions, the number of operations or quantity of output. So, these quantitative restrictions or number of operations, number of natural persons supplying a service, fourth mode, the type of legal entity, what type of legal entity you will permit, that also to be mentioned. Then participation of foreign capital. So, what is the cap of the FDI, that also you can put restrictions, and finally, you put it in the individual schedules or the commitments. And national treatment principles, which we already talked about, you should give equal opportunity to regardless of whether they are foreign service suppliers or it is the domestic service suppliers. So, national treatment principle is strictly applicable to the service agreement as well. So, you can see these principles are applicable. So, we talked about the specific commitments. The specific commitments or general obligations are related to market access, and these market access principles are attached to individual country schedules. So, every country negotiate each other and they agree to open up specific sectors each other. So, you open up your sector and I will open up my sector. This is the way the negotiations going on, and finally, this list will be attached to the schedules, country schedules. A schedule look like this. So, you can see the sector and horizontal commitments and other commitments, sectoral specific commitments, and limitation on market access, limitation on national treatment, and additional comments if any. So, they can put it specifically bound or unbound. So, for example, limitation on national treatment, authorization is required for acquiring land by foreigners. This is one of the Indian conditions. So, you can see these are the type of schedules which are attached with all WTO agreements. Then what are the restrictions? What could be the example of market access restrictions? For example, exclusive or monopoly operators. So, joint stock companies, monopolies, state monopolies, quantitative restrictions on presence of natural persons. How many H1B visa will be issued by the US per year? And also restrictions on national treatment we can look into, restrictions on foreigners participation in company boards. So, we make restrictions on company boards, prohibition of foreign land ownership, discriminatory minimum capital or minimum reserve requirements. All these can be included in the country specific schedules, and specific provisions are related to state monopolies. So, Article 8(1) requires the members to ensure that monopolies or exclusive service providers do not act in a manner inconsistent with the MFN obligations and commitments. So, it is very simple, all the members or monopolies should act according to the market principles. It means that subject to competition provisions. So, Article 28(h) which talks about monopoly supplier. So, monopoly supplier created by a particular member, and he should be the sole supplier of a particular service. For example, most of the state enterprises, the BSNL, telephone company, postal services, rail, road transport, etc., can be become a monopoly in this category, monopoly supplier. So, this can become, and slowly we are opening up of sectors one by one, and you can find state monopolies in this particular area. So, railway also it will come under the state monopolies. And what are the basic demands in mode 1? We already explained that the mode 1 is the services travels borders, services cross borders. So, commitments in sectors including professional services, especially computer related services, health services, education, etc. So, you can see that removal of commercial presence requirements. Commercial presence requirements most of the countries now require. For example, India, Make in India program, which insists that you should manufacture the products in the country, in our country. So, presence of commercial presence, we require commercial presence, and also you can see that the mode 1 and mode 2 services and technological developments in future, that also we have to take into consideration, and these are some of the demands in the under the mode 1. So, if you look into the mode 4, mode 4 is the most controversial because the movement of people are involved. So, I have mentioned certain numbers, and these numbers review or renew by the United States every year from time to time, and how many H1B visas are annually issued. And mode 4 there are lot of requests lot of requests under the mode 4 service supply, and one is delinking of mode 4 supply with mode 3, because if you have commercial presence, then your persons, the foreign persons should come for running at least with some limitations. So, the people are asking for delinking from this movement of people under mode 4 to mode 3 commercial presence. So, if you allow commercial presence and if you do not allow a foreign person to come and sit here, then I think this is is connected. So, but the argument is for delinking mode 3 and mode 4 services and removal of conditions and wage parity. And we know that a foreigner is not going to come to India and work for a salary which is at parity with Indian workers, because there are a lot of issues are involved, that is maybe his country status, and then the money which is involved, the exchange rates are involved, and the wage code of that particular country is involved, the labor laws of that particular country is involved. So, I do not think there is any justification in asking parity in salary and other things under mode 3 or mode 4. So, and most of the countries avail services under mode 4 because they always look for cheap labor. For example, the Indian IT people, those who work under H1B visas in the US. This mainly they are not only working in Indian companies, Indian origin companies, but also they work in foreign companies, because they are the cheapest manpower in the world. So, and also some of the economic need test. So, removal of economic need test has become more transparent, and then domestic regulations. Domestic regulations play always a crucial role, because most of the countries does not look into the commitments under the GATS, and they increases visa fees enormously, and many times India protested to the United States for increasing the professional visa services charges. So, now that will also come under the demands under mode 4. And in conclusion, I would say that service agreement is one of the most flexible agreement with general commitments and specific commitments. These specific commitments are up to the members to decide. They discuss with other members, and finally, you mutually agree and open up. So, these specific commitments, their commitments bound and unbound is mentioned under each individual country schedules. So, the basic GATT commitments includes the general commitments and specific commitments under the schedule. So, every country have the freedom to decide whether to open or not to open a particular sector. For example, India so far has not opened up higher education sector, and legal service sector not opened up. So, in the next class we are going to discuss about specifically the legal service sector and why the India is not opening, what are the basic commitments, and also the pros and cons of opening the legal service sector in the next class. So, we saw in this particular class the different modes of supply and also 161 total 161 areas of the modes of supply. So, this product classification is according to the UN classification system, and it is mandatorily to be accepted by all the countries, and they are accepted, and I think opening up of the service sector has benefited. Some of the countries are vastly benefited, and one of such country is India, because our IT personnels and other professionals can go abroad and give services, and more opening up of mode 4 supply is expected, and the proposals are submitted by India to the WTO from time to time. So, in the next class we will see the opening of legal service sector. Thank you.